Hi, this is Ken Cook with Environmental Working Group, and I'm here today to answer some questions you've sent in online about GMOs. The DARK Act is really denying Americans their right to know. That's what we call it anyway. This is a law that was introduced, legislation introduced by pesticide companies like Monsanto and big food companies to block your right to know if you have genetically engineered ingredients in your food. And the reason is simple. Because the federal government doesn't require labeling, states have stepped in at the request of their citizens, including in many cases citizens who've put measures on ballots and voted on them and narrowly lost, that would require labeling of genetically modified organisms if they're in your food. The food companies and the pesticide companies, they don't like that so much. So they've come to Washington with $50 million worth of lobbying and campaign contributions than the usual tricks of their trade. And they've gotten Congress to introduce legislation that would block states, preempt states, from being able to label food in their own jurisdiction. Other things about the DARK Act are also bad. The federal government only lets voluntary actions take place with respect to labeling. No one uses it, so you don't get the voluntary labels. And then finally, one of the things that's really upsetting about this proposal, this DARK Act, is that it would probably make it likely that foods labeled natural could also contain genetically engineered ingredients. So that's why we're opposing the DARK Act. We're fighting very hard right now in Washington to make sure it does not become law. We want, if the states decide they want to take action because the federal government doesn't, we want to preserve the ability of the states to do that. 90% or more of Americans across all party lines, all economic categories, support the idea that we should have a right to know. Citizens, consumers in 64 other countries have this right. They have passed laws in those other countries, all over Europe, in Asia, South America, other places. So we need right now to have this right to know put right on the package so that it's clear for those who want to know that food has been genetically engineered. You can buy organic, you can buy non-GMO certified, and these are good ways to buy food that doesn't have those ingredients in it, but if you're buying conventional food, you just won't know without a label. We want that label. Other countries label their food in slightly different ways. The general idea, though, is that it's not a warning label, it's simply descriptive. It says if soybean oil or corn has been included in a food product that's genetically engineered, it says that on the back, on the label, where they list all of the ingredients. It's a very straightforward thing. It has not disrupted their food over there, their food supply. It has not led to higher food prices. It's just become accepted practice. And all of the big food companies that are huge in the United States, almost all of them sell in these other countries, and they abide by the labeling rules. One of the claims we often hear is that labeling food, if it has genetically engineered ingredients, is going to raise food prices, and it's nonsense. Food companies change their labels multiple times, sometimes every year on individual products. So this is just part of the cost of doing business. The difference between organic and non-GMO is really that organic is much more. You can't use GMOs in organic, plus you can't use certain synthetic pesticides, weed killers, insecticides, and so forth. You can't use hormones and antibiotics that are artificial. You can't use irradiation. With respect to GMOs, the non-GMO label simply means that it's not produced with genetically engineered ingredients in it. Well, one place to go and to check and see if there are GMOs in food is the EWG Food Scores database. We have 80,000 or so foods in there. If we think they contain genetically engineered ingredients because of the types of ingredients that are used, we indicate that in our Food Score database. Buying organic is a way to avoid GMOs, and of course the non-GMO project, they have a great system too that covers thousands of brands now. That's another way to find foods that don't have GMOs in them. You can also shop at Thrive, because Thrive does not sell any products that have GMOs in them. To fight the Dark Act, and we really need to fight it right now in the Senate, there are a couple of things you can do. First, go to EWG.org or to justlabelit.org and get up-to-date information on the state of the battle. And it's being fought right now in Washington, D.C. Secondly, the most important thing you can do individually is to pick up the phone and call your senator and say, I do not want you to support the Dark Act. I want food to be labeled if it has GMOs. Don't block state action if states decide to do it. We want to have our right to know. And the last thing you can do is call your friends or email your friends and say, pick up the phone. It'll only take 30 seconds to register your opinion with the United States Senate. Real people matter. Can we overcome the lobbyists? Can we overcome the campaign contributions and all the other dirty tricks that are being thrown our way in this fight? Well, we know we can't overcome it without your help. We need the people to rise up, as they have in many states, to say, we demand a right to know if GE ingredients are in our food. Thank you very much for your questions. If you have more questions, go to EWG.org or our sister organization, justlabelit.org. There's tons of information about the fight to guarantee your right to know about genetically engineered ingredients in your food. And if you have other questions, please send them in to EWG. We'll get back to you as soon as we possibly can, and thanks for your support.